Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between reality and a game.
Diminished sense of reality, huh?
Designate Raiden. 5th mission iteration.
I thought Snake was dead.
Solid Snake did die. But he's also here in the shell. Either he survived or there are two of them.
But they went down with that tanker 2 years ago. We even recovered Snake's body.
And the DNA test results on the body say it's him. You're saying Snake is still alive and pulled another one?
No, he's not involved in this one. His body was positively ID'd 2 years ago.
Jack, I know what you're saying, but Snake is dead. You have to believe him. He can't be here, not even as this Dr. Hal Emmerich.
Snake is dead.
And buried.
It was all an illusion? Everything I've done so far? Snake? The deception was my own, not theirs.
Raiden has come too.
So was Snake and any other character in MGS2 real or just a figment of Raiden's imagination? Most of what we know is based on fiction rather than reality. The events of MGS2 are no exception. Everything is not as it seems, just like Venom Snake, who for the most part acts as an unreliable narrator to the audience in MGS5. We can only believe half of what we see and only half of what we hear. And even then we're often still in doubt in what we witnessed is real. MGS5 serving as the precursor to the S3 plan to control the public, and also moulding men into legendary mercenaries like Snake or Big Boss.
Given the right situation, the right story, anyone can be shaped into Snake. Even rookies can fight like men of experience.
Put those 9 years behind you, and return as Big Boss. That's how Koss would want it.
The Patriots by design unfold events throughout the series based on byproducts and experiences of mission data gathered and often repeated to future generations, as seen in MGS2 with its links to Shadow Moses is a testament to that.
Remember the Shadow Moses VR training?
Take out the circuit panel?
Right.
But there's no way into the room.
Try ventilation ducts.
Yeah, I think I see one.
Look for a remote control missile launcher. You can guide it through the duct into the room.
Snake, watch out. That place is filled with gas. Also, the floor is electrified. First, destroy the high voltage switch. It's the switchboard on the northwest wall.
But how? I can't reach it.
Use a remote-controlled missile.
All the Patriots can do is essentially repeat the same pattern.
In the end, they're no more than a program. All they can do is repeat the same pattern over and over again.
The helicopter crash after Ground Zeroes caused shrapnel to lodge in Venom Snake's head directly near his cerebral cortex.
The fragments are lodged deep within your cerebral cortex. Mental and physical impairment are unavoidable.
Interestingly, so was Raiden's nanomachines, albeit intentionally by the Patriots.
The information is being carried by the nanomachines in your cerebral cortex and throughout the neural network they've formed.
And what does this part of the brain affect? Thinking, decision-making, sensory processing, and voluntary movement. This could potentially explain that some of the time what these two may have been experiencing been an hallucination, projecting characters both living and dead, as MGS5 has showcased. As we know, Raiden underwent a form of training in advanced forms that involves technology and VR.
Alright, Raiden. You've already covered infiltration and VR training.
I've completed 300 missions in VR. I feel like some kind of legendary mercenary.
His altered state of consciousness has helped us implant powerful suggestions through induced hypnagogia. He's experienced all your missions on record and shares all your knowledge and experience to make him believe that he is the one true Big Boss.
Compared to Venom Snake's CIA-esque MKUltra hypnagogic methods to train him to be the ultimate soldier under his handler, Ocelot. a member of the Patriots.
Don't take too long getting used to your new self. Hang on.
Raiden underwent many missions replicating Solid Snake's missions in MGS2's Babel as well. A game that's considered widely, along with many other games in the series, not canon to the mainline story of Metal Gear Solid. However, there is points that we can take away from these games that can serve as room for headcanon and actually add to the piece of the story. As we know, Metal Gear Solid is ambiguous. For anybody who truly reads and understands the story knows it's not as one-dimensional as some people think it is. Everything is left open, everything is misguided, the truth is often manipulated, and reality is often distorted by unreliable narrators.
The truth behind Big Boss became riddled with exaggeration, misrepresentation, and outright lies. Zero disseminated these stories among the masses.
Anyway, at the end of Ghost Babel, it's confirmed after the special missions that the AI congratulates Raiden, or rather Jack, for completing his missions, which was a warped and inaccurate version of the events that mirror the Outer Heaven Uprising in 1995. It's like an amalgamation of them events during that time. The AI then explains to Raiden that he will be needed again in the future, alluding to Metal Gear Solid 2.
Your mission is to infiltrate the Fortress Gallowade, rescue the hostages, and neutralize Metal Gear before its assembly is complete.
Then later on, Raiden had his hand at Shadow Moses, more than likely the Twin Snakes version, given on how over-exaggerated the events play out, and Raiden's obsession with Snake being this legendary hero.
Snake, you're a legend, and that's why I need to ask you this.
Legend? A legend is nothing but fiction. Someone tells it, someone else remembers, everybody passes it on.
And to the tanker events, which falsify what really happened in Snake's mission. The event shown in the cutscenes is Raiden's version, which was originally on the early trailers, but all of this gets confirmed in the context of the conversation.
I've gone through VR training of the tanker mission before.
Yeah? Well, I doubt it accurately simulates the events of that mission.
Raiden doesn't play as himself, but rather an avatar of Solid Snake, taking on the legend, just as Venom Snake does by proxy. Bear in mind, this video is simply nothing more than a theory, and some light fun between the fandom that love to speculate. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, consider subscribing and hit that like button. Be sure to turn on the notifications for more content. So Raiden starts his mission now with the alias of Raiden after Solid Snake had been flagged as a terrorist, all intentional by the Patriots. They had to ensure that Snake was considered dead and gone. Raiden, appointed as a Patriot pawn just as Solid Snake, has to complete a mission very similar to Shadow Moses and several other objectives to complete the S3 plan, which is a means to control the public. But along the way, Raiden meets Pliskin, aka Solid Snake, giving Raiden support throughout some of his mission, just like Ishmael did for Venom whilst escaping the hospital. But if one thing MGS5 showed us, that if anything, Ishmael was more than likely an hallucination given on certain scenes that point to this fact.
Who are you? Who am I? You're talking to yourself.
Or rather an interpretation, but considering we see him die in one scene then reappear again, and all the other discrepancies which I'm sure by now you know, points to this hallucination of a character. The red flags were always there, beyond the mask. For Pliskin, as it was Ishmael, it really wasn't much of a deception. Ishmael carried the voice of Big Boss, just as Venom Snake would intend, as a part of his brain has been brainwashed into believing he is Big Boss or projecting the real Big Boss as his saviour, just as Raiden would do with Snake. Most of us figured this out anyway, not just by his appearance, but, his voice gave it away, along with other features, including the obvious name print that said David Hayter. Now, Raiden's mind at this time was still stable, before he entered Arsenal gear after GW was partially damaged, causing Raiden's nanomachines to affect his brain and altering his perception. Hence why the entire Arsenal gear looks unusual. almost like a digital VR coding world seeping into reality. Raiden climbs a ladder to a dark platform that looks just like a target in the VR shooting targets. Only up until he passes out, he's atop of Arsenal gear, and reality seems more stable, which feels familiar to when Venom is conversing with Paz inside a platform still under development, meaning the inside doesn't even exist, hence why he wakes outside, where reality once again comes into effect. What makes MGS2 really one of the most profound games of all time is that everything Raiden experienced could have just been manufactured by his own mind, cobbled up by expectations and experience, as Otacon suggests.
GW was most likely stimulating cortical activity in the dormant part of your brain through signal manipulation of your own nanomachines. The kernel is, in part, your own creation, cobbled together from expectations and experience. That's crazy!
That too could even point to Otacon not even being real, but projected just like Colonel Campbell. Since when you think about it, Raiden even is aware of Otacon. He's not exactly certain, but if we look at one of the codec conversations, you can actually tell that it seems familiar to him. Since he has actually experienced the Shadow Moses missions, he's most likely come across the likes of some of the characters in that said incident. I mean, why not, right? He's pretty much projected Snake from that.
Colonel, I need some answers from you. Who exactly is Pliskin and his partner?
I know what you're thinking.
It keeps coming back to Shadow Moses, and now this Otacon.
AKA Hal Emmerich, PhD, a Shadow Moses survivor.
Rose?
Snake and Otacon both became fugitives after Shadow Moses, wanted for acts of terrorism.
There's a plausible idea that Raiden has always been trapped inside a VR training kernel, and it's an amalgamation of different events and expectations, partly by his brain and the VR machine from the Patriots. Instead of being once aware of being inside a simulation, Raiden can now no longer tell the difference. It's become all too real, but also at the very same time, like a dream, like a nightmare.
It's like being in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
Jack, snap out of it.
And you, Rose, I can't believe you're on this mission. I keep thinking I'll wake up.
Raiden, this is real, and that's why you won't wake up.
But nothing seems real.
And that somehow Raiden is trapped in this VR machine that is malfunctioning, that is betraying a lot of events that have happened throughout the series. The AI, or rather the Patriots, sway Raiden from the truth, as well as alter his memory. That Raiden never really ultimately experienced true reality. He was stuck in the simulation to the very end.
Your persona, experiences, triumphs, and defeats are nothing but byproducts. The real objective was ensuring that we could generate and manipulate them.
Otacon's statements back the notion that Raiden, before the events of GW's crash, was already projecting characters through expectations and experience. Pliskin may be a separate entity, just a highly trained soldier who outlived the rest. He acts as a conduit to Raiden's projections that sees him as Snake rather than a different soldier, or perhaps a mixture of both. The typical rough and rugged type that carries the typical military aptitude, resembling Snake, but in fact is someone else entirely. So I know what you're thinking, and I agree, this sounds insane, and narratively speaking from what we know of the series, and considering the game didn't end at MGS2, which really defeats the entire theory now. But when we look back, Kojima intentionally wanted this to happen because he wished to move on and explore new creative ideas and leave it to the team for future titles. In an E3 interview, Kojima even stated problems kept forcing him back into a leadership position when his team was working on MGS3 and MGS4. Kojima states, Metal Gear Solid 2 was meant to be my last Metal Gear before I handed it off to the team. And my team did actually start working on MGS3, but unfortunately there was problems and it didn't go well. So I was forced to come back and work on it. When it came to MGS4, I said okay, this time for sure, I'm not getting involved. so I really handed it off, because I set 2 different directors working on it, and I was sure I wouldn't have to get involved. But there was a difference in expectations of what I felt that Metal Gear should be." End quote. MGS2 could have been a true conclusive ending to the series, left open for interpretations just as its successor did in The Phantom Pain. Some people in the fandom have admitted they would have loved the conclusive ending in MGS2, leaving the player questioning existence and their place in it, and if anything we experienced in the game is real or just an illusion, and us trying to separate the two. As the game suggests, the point is to find meaning and morals in its subtext, regardless of how real it is. Ultimately, it's fiction either way. But on with this theory. Bearing in mind all what I've just mentioned in the latter, if MGS4 didn't exist, Pliskin acts as a proxy of Solid Snake, assisting Raiden. He appears in the most convenient of times, giving Raiden backup and radio support, all with the iconic voice Raiden is so used to hearing through the VR simulations. Could Raiden still be playing out unfolding chain of events that appear more surreal than what they are in reality? We know this again with Venom Snake in many cutscenes. It's yet a fate that Raiden 2 wishes to accept, and maybe he cannot. But does it matter if it's real or not? The memories and the role Raiden and Venom are assigned are burdens that we have to carry as the Overseer. It's unclear if Raiden for the most part wasn't just projecting events that were unfolding with said characters in the narrative, or if he constructed them just like Colonel, Rose and even Snake, and who knows how many more characters. The VR theory, in a part of it, considering how wide and expansive it truly is, suggests that the events of Metal Gear Solid 2 were at least in part happening inside a computer-simulated virtual reality, and not the same reality that its predecessors did. Obviously, with the release of Metal Gear Solid 4, we see a complete contradiction of this theory that ultimately destroys it. But this does not mean the game was originally intended to be seen this way, which makes the theory interesting. But it is plausible if MGS2 ended as it did, that Raiden could have still been inside a virtual reality test, or simply dissociated through events that did happen like in MGS5, albeit in ways that are unreliable as the narrators of a constructed story. When Pliskin reveals himself as Snake, it's Raiden's expectations being self-validated in a form of convenient truth, as the Patriots suggest, to make him feel better.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
At some point, Snake and Olga use Raiden as bait to gain access to Arsenal. It's here where the Pliskin we know, or the Pliskin persona, dies and doesn't seem to return. The player feels just as exposed as Raiden. We're not in control anymore. Everything feels wrong, vulnerable, absurd. And there's this quiet instinct kicking in. We want to cover ourselves, hide from the embarrassment, pretend none of this is really happening, that we're still important, that the mission still matters, and if we just push forward, things will make sense again. And that ultimately we need to find Snake. And yet all we have left, literally, is a pair of dog tags, our name, our so-called identity we've created. That's it. That's the only thing that's left connecting us to the story, to the character, to the illusion of control, but even that feels a bit shaky.
Sure, and disarm the terrorists.
My role? Why do you keep saying that?
Why not? This is a type of role-playing game. The point is that you play out your part, and I expect you to turn in a perfect performance.
Colonel, I just remembered something.
What?
That I've never met you in person. Not once.
Complete your mission, according to the simulation.
Colonel, who are you?
No more questions. We have Rosemary.
Just moments before, Solidus dropped a neatly packaged backstory for Raiden, that he was a child soldier, that he was conditioned, that his memories were manipulated, but at this point you start to wonder how much of that was even true. How much of it is it just another lie that Raiden tells himself? Another version of reality designed to protect his ego from being completely shattered? The way the game is designed is intentionally left open for us to think this way. Ultimately, throughout MGS2, when does Raiden ever actually think for himself? His perceptions are always shaped by different characters that ultimately affect his decision making in what he believes in.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there.
First, he thought he was Snake, a soldier following orders, part of something larger. He gladly accepted the title.
This is Snake. I'm now inside Strut A of Shell 1.
How are things?
We're in luck. Looks like there are no sentries posted here.
What's the visibility?
The lights on the plant struts are functioning. I won't have to use the IR goggles.
Any problems?
There was a brand new hole cut through the oil fence. There's someone else besides me that wanted to get in badly.
But when that identity starts breaking apart, he doesn't return to nothing, he becomes something else. Jack the Ripper. Another mask, just more violent and unfiltered. The mission keeps changing, but he keeps holding on to some version of himself like he's afraid of being truly naked. He's still yet to find his true identity, and in turn constructs Snake as a mentor figure in order to guide him to try and figure out what he should do and who he should be.
What am I? What am I supposed to do?
Find something to believe in and find it for yourself. And when you do, pass it on to the future.
Believe in what?
That's your problem.
If Kojima was trying to make a point about self-delusion about how far we will go to avoid facing a reality we don't understand, this moment makes that point clear. It's had to go this far for us to try and understand it. This is also where Olga brings up the S3 plan, and openly questions whenever Raiden will be able to handle the truth. Not the surface level truth about the Patriots nor the mission, but the deeper one, the idea that none of this was real. In fact, Olga could be another projection of Raiden's prior experience on the tanker and Shadow Moses, merging Grey Fox and the ninja suit with Olga.
You're just like me. We're just pawns.
Pawns for what purpose?
The S3 plan.
Huh?
You'll figure it out sooner or later, but I wonder if you'll handle the truth.
Olga, or rather Raiden, tells himself just that. Still in self-denial, as most of us were at the time, including MGS5's plot as Venom. Are we able and willing to accept the truth is the question here. Will we come to terms that the truth is not really what we want it to be? Hence it's a convenient truth. If you're wondering how all of this fits into this epic VR theory that expands off into many different directions and probably far more than I can cover at this point, it's simple. Both Raiden and the player are now aware that on some level, everything they've done is fake and meaningless. We both went into the game hoping to relive something like Shadow Moses, but instead we're handed a lie. We both stared down the possibility that everything was a digital illusion inside our heads, evidenced by Raiden still questioning whenever Rose was real, considering they have already met prior. And, even at the very end, and yet we choose to play along anyway.
To mention the death of Rose. She's wired the same way.
Rose, does she actually exist?
Of course I do, Jack. You have to believe.
Damn!
Just like Venom's Snake, clinging to the identity of Big Boss despite all the signs screaming otherwise. The truth is laid bare, but we keep moving forward. In denial. In the obedience to the fiction, as the game is trying to imply. The truth is hidden in the lies.
Now do you remember who you are, what you were meant to do?
We've used our own freedom to submit to the illusion, and now we're left with the question, what did it all mean? And of course, who else should appear to help us make sense of it all? At the very end of Metal Gear Solid 2, but our old imaginary friend that we wish to see so much, Snake. Just as the Phantom Pain gives us a version of Big Boss delivering a speech that almost seems like it's coming from within Venom himself. A message not from Big Boss, but from the part of himself he still believes in. The mentor figure who still lives in his mind. The deuteragonist who speaks within them. The point of the Metal Gear series has never been to spoon-feed canon. It's to make you think and to confront assumptions, challenging identity and pass on ideas, and ultimately leave you with something lasting. And this can be done regardless or whenever the events on screen are real in the Metal Gear universe.
Your brain might process visual information incorrectly. In other words, you could have hallucinations. You might see things that aren't there, and not see things as they really are. You experience any of that?
The ending of MGS2 captures this perfectly, not just in words, but in structure, because it reinforces the theme by plunging us deeper into the implausible. We're given a choice: look away and pretend it's real, or see the fiction for what it is, and still walk away with the truth. We watch as Raiden stands in front of Federal Hall. The streets are empty, silent, and then, without warning, crowds of people begin to appear, emerging from nothing. It seems unreal, all moving in slow motion, and not even bothered by the events that are happening around him or what Raiden can see. They're oblivious to the chaos that's just unfolded, which is ironically familiar to us, the audience. Snake appears too, out of nowhere, like the Colonel, like Rose. He's a part of the illusion. One last comforting fabrication to explain to us that most of what we perceive is fiction and is only as real as our brain tells us it is.
Most of what they call real is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is.
In fact, the things that we consider objective realities might just be subjective, man-made, created constructions. The brain is capable of many illusions, different perceptions. Metal Gear Solid 2, aside from its most predominant themes that are relevant in modern society, is its actual self-awareness that makes it very profound. But Snake's role here is simple: make the hard pill easier to swallow. He's built from our hopes and expectations, molded to deliver closure. He makes the ending feel like it matters, even though we've just handed over everything to the Patriots. It's the same with MGS5. Venom Snake's mind is trying to protect him from the reality that had unfolded. At first he failed to remove the second bomb, so he constructed an idea in his mind to take away from the pain a convenient truth where XOF blew the helicopter down. Just as well as he could have also imagined the tape that Big Boss had sent him, aside from the past tapes we also know are false, as well as the ending cutscene with Big Boss and Ocelot conversing, and the whole scenario with the passport and Ocelot telling him to change his face doesn't make any sense at all. Because where throughout the game does Big Boss look like the Avatar from Ground Zeroes? Not once. This is all just metaphorics. Big Boss has stripped away the identity that once was Venom Snake. The ending almost seems unreal as MGS2. We're looking through the unreliable narrator's eyes the entire time rather than split scenarios, hence why the endings seem a little too unreal or rather a vivid dream. And Snake, just like that in the scene, he disappears just as suddenly as he arrived. He gives Raiden life advice, he points towards a future, but in truth it's Raiden talking to himself, projecting the voice of his hero, asking himself the questions he doesn't want to ask, giving himself permission to move forward. And then Rose shows up, as if by fate, standing near Federal Hall in the most convenient possible place at the right time, at the most emotionally loaded moment. And her arrival means different things to different players. For some it's a reunion, for others another glitch in the simulation. She's calm, undisturbed by the events that just took place. Identical to the Rose who spoke through the codec. It creates a paradox. Was that version real? Was any of it? Where does the illusion end and reality begin? It almost seems like Rose and Raiden don't even know each other.
Nothing. Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
They supposedly met at Federal Hall talking about King Kong, and then conveniently for the second time. We're led to believe that Rose was captured by the Patriots, as was Sonny. But if that's the case, how did Rose get away unscathed in such short notice compared to Sonny, who still had to be rescued from the Patriots? Why did Rose get let off so easily? When Raiden says, "I won't let you be just a dream," he's summing up his entire relationship with her. She has an idea he's clinging to. It's a dream that he refuses to let go, and when she replies, "I've made up my mind to stay with you whenever this is real or a bad dream," it just says everything about Raiden's inner conflict. She isn't just speaking to him, she is him. She's mirroring the very doubt he is too afraid to face. Does any of this definitely prove that the entire game was a VR simulation? No, it doesn't. There's plenty of evidence to support the theory, but without Hideo Kojima stepping forward and declaring it canon, it can never be fact. On the contrary, Metal Gear Solid 4 went out of its way to contradict the VR theory, largely in response to the outrage over Sons of Liberty's so-called convoluted plot. But it leaves something open. If MGS2 had been the final entry in the series, the ambiguity would have stayed intact, and maybe the theory would have carried more weight, especially now. MGS4 confirms that not everything Raiden experienced was an illusion, just as the Phantom Pain confirms that not everything Venom lived through was fake. But both games still ask the same fundamental question. What do you believe? And what will you decide is real? And does any of it really matter? As Snake says, the choice is ours. MGS5's ending feels like it was meant to hand the player a blank page, not a conclusion, but a reflection, something MGS2 was always quietly building towards, a chance to fill in the blanks ourselves. MGS2 is probably the most profound game ever made, because it weaponized expectation, broke the fourth wall, and turned the actor playing into a part of its narrative. It misled us, intentionally, feeding us familiar setups only to reveal by the end that we were complicit in a simulation. We believed in the mission, the legend of Snake, the morality of our actions until it all unraveled. The game exposed our trust in authority, our dependence on narrative structures, and our willingness to obey fiction without question. In doing so, it reflected not just Raiden's confusion, but our own. Its brilliance lies not in giving answers, but in forcing us to question everything, even reality itself. So, whenever Snake was real or not, does it matter if it's all fictional anyway? You've got to love the irony, right? So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I just want to give a big shout out to 2 of my members who have joined the membership. Thank you for all your support. As always, here's to you, Maxi Brush and the Adam Classic. I'll leave the link down below if you wish to support me further in making more content. It's thanks to all you guys that keeps this channel alive and the Metal Gear Solid legacy going. So once again, thank you for watching. Until we meet again.